Hey there, in today's episode, we're going to take a look at the most important display properties out there in CSS. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button and leave out a comment with what you want me to explain next. Alrighty, welcome to CSS where dreams are made. Here is our cascading down the sheet. So let's start off with the most popular display, called display block. So we have a H1, H2, a bunch of elements here, and as you can see, by default, their behavior is to just drop down to a new line. That's exactly what this play block does. It just takes up all the available space horizontally for you, and then any other element that you add is going to drop down on a new line. So we have a H1 here. If I had a class of box1, I just added the background color to that. As you can see, it just takes up the whole available space. Now we can do padding on it and stuff like that, so that's gonna work fine. So if we drop a padding, a margin, as you can see, everything works as we intended. Now we also have the ability to change the width on it and set an explicit height if we want. So I'll do 20 VH. Let's have a look at our first head scratcher in CSS. We have an anchor attack here, like, and let's say you want to style it up. So you go here and then you add your favorite color, purple, and then we'll do a font weight, the bold. Yeah, everything works fine until you start adding a padding because you want to separate it from the list item. But that doesn't work. Why not? Well, an anchor tag is not displayed block by default. It's displayed inline, as well as a span that's also displayed inline. And what that means is that they only are going to take up the available space necessary to render out the text here. So if I add two more, as you can see, they're just going to come one next to each other. They do apply horizontal spacing, but they do not apply vertical spacing, and you also cannot add a specific height or width to it. So if I do a height of 20 rem, see, nothing happens. If I do width of 20 rem, nothing happens again. You go. See, nothing happens. Now if I add a padding, even though you're going to see the padding here, you can still see the padding being applied vertically. It's just the other elements are just gonna ignore it. So if we do a background of light blue, as you can see, it's still there. Essentially, display inline behaves like words in the sentence, and that's kind of what we use it mostly for, is to style up pieces of text within an element. So for example, in this paragraph, right, let's say I want to maybe make a word here bold and red. So you could add a span which is inline. So if I add some styling to it like red with a font weight and a padding and hit save, as you can see, it applies it on that specific text. Let me give you another head scratcher. Here, I'll add two buttons to the screen, and as you can see, I apply the same styles to it. So the anchor tags and the button have the same styles, but check this out. Now if I add a margin of 1 to it, it actually gives us the vertical space. What's going on here? Because we know with inline, you cannot get that vertical space. Well, a button is displayed inline block, and all that means is the annoying things about inline, like adding width, height, padding, margin, and stuff like that, is gonna work. Not only that, but you can also change other elements to behave like display inline block if you want. So I could head here to perhaps these lists here. So I'll grab the Lee and I'll just do a display of inline block and hit save. As you can see, they're gonna come on the same line. I can add some padding here of 1 rem if I want to and separate it. Let's talk about display none and two other properties that look very similar but do completely different things. So by default, if I add a display block on this Lee, it's just gonna remove it from the DOM. And any other elements or your whole layout is going to shift according to that change. So if this gets popped off from here, our paragraph essentially is going to adjust and move up. So when I hit save, as you can see, we removed it completely from our DOM. However, if you want to animate this, it's not going to work because display none is essentially like an on and off switch. You can either go from display none to display block. There's no like in between state like opacity. So let's have a look at that. If I go opacity of 0.5, as you can see, the element starts fading out. Now I still can select the element, that's still there, and the layout is not gonna collapse, right? So if this goes down to 0, it's still gonna keep the space there. I can still technically select it as well. It's essentially like having white text on the white background. The good thing about this is that we can animate this because we can animate the properties between the 0 all the way to 1, right? So you can gradually start animating this into view. So that's fantastic. The downside of opacity is 0 is that the element can still be selected. So that's where you would switch over to something like a visibility of hidden. And if I hit save on that, as you can see, that's going to act exactly like opacity 0. However, this time, I cannot grab the elements at all. Let's have a look at the most popular, Display Flex. It's my favorite way to make layouts, just because it's so simple and it's one-directional, which is fantastic because it's not hard to think about like red. So I have a UL here with 3 allies, and if I add a Display Flex on top of this, what's gonna happen basically is all the children elements inside the UL are gonna come in one line. And so it acts like all the children elements are displayed in line. But when we add Display Flex, we gain benefits. We gain other properties that we can now use to position these elements inside this box. So let's say our UL also has maybe a height to it of 10 rem. Alright, just to give it some space in here, we can do justify content and put center here, and that's going to align all of our list items horizontally. We can do flex end as well. Flex well as at start, and then we can also apply space around, between, or evenly if you want to align your items vertically. You can use align items for that. So we can do center here, or we can do the same flex end or start. Now, Display Flex can go in 2 directions. It can go either in a row or in a column, and that's the behavior we saw. Also, keep in mind when you're working with Flex, you don't necessarily even need padding when you want to add spacing in between the elements. So for example, here, I can just add a gap of 2 rem to separate these list items from each other. Now, just because I added a line item center to the UL, it doesn't mean that we cannot modify the position of each individual li. So I grab the first one here, and I can just add a line self to Flex, and for example, if I just want this to move down here at the bottom for me like that. Display Grid is very similar to Flexbox. The only difference is that it works 2-dimensionally. So we get to create columns and rows, but with that like flexibility also comes more complexity, unfortunately. So that's why I'm not too big of a fan using it. But let's make an example here. So let's create 2 columns here. I'll do grid template columns, and we can use one father. One FR is going to take up all the available space essentially. So if I add 2 of these, it's going to create 2 columns for us with the same space, 3. Let's do 3. And we also have access to the repeat function here. So if I don't want to say 1FR, 1FR, or 1FR, I can just do repeat 3 times 1FR, and as you can see, we're going to get the same result. Here, I can just jump and customize this any way I want. So, let's say I want 4 columns, and as you can see, by default, it's just going to automatically create more rows for you if there's more elements inside. But you can also customize this if you want. So I can do 1FR, 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 and as you can see, that creates 3 rows even though we don't have enough elements in here. One of the best things about CSS Grid is that it just allows you to easily take any element and move it anywhere you want in that grid. So for example, the heart here that we have, let's say I want to move it here or maybe at the bottom here, so we can use that. We can use grid row and grid column to position these elements. So if I do grid row from 1 to 2, nothing's gonna happen. However, if I do from 2 to 3, as you can see, it moves in the middle. How does that work? So essentially, you start counting from 1. Doesn't matter if it's column or row. So for row, you'd go from here, 1, the 2, 2 to 3, and 3 to 4. For column, you do from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5. Okay, so if I want to position this at the end here, I can do a 3 to 4. So let's change that from 3 to 4 and hit save, and as you can see, it's at the bottom. So if I want to move it all the way to the end here, I'll just have to count. So 1, 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, and 5 to 6. So I would do a grid column of 5 to 6. So when will they use grid? I'd only use it really when creating complex layouts like this. Now, there's a couple of other displays out there, but to be fair, I never really use them. You can essentially add display like table, for example, to make another element behave like a table. And you can do that with like to make it behave like a list as well, or like a table cell or column, etc., etc. So you can do that, but I mean, never came in handy. If you know any tricks with that, let me know down in the comments below. I'm quite curious. So there you go. Those are CSS display properties. Hope you learned something new. Hope it helps you with your layouts. If you know any other cool tricks that you can do, write it down in the comments. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. Have a good one. Bye.